Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Conscious Health podcast with my co-host, David Ortega. And today we also have a very special guest, Dr. Richa Love. And today we're talking about how intuitive medicine supports us and heals us in so many different ways. So I'm going to start with a very short bio, and then I'm going to ask you about your journey and how you got to where you are now. So Dr. Richa Love, and I love your name, it's beautiful. Dr. Richa Love is a leading family physician in Canada who has helped thousands of patients in her 25 plus years of clinical experience as a family physician. She has emerged as a distinguished leader within her community. She is a published author, researcher, teacher, speaker at international and national conferences. She is the co-founder and former medical director of Harvest Medicine and National Cannabis Assessment Clinic. She is also the founder and CEO of CANU, a cannabis educational platform. Her journey through medicine has led her to have a strong belief in achieving health through the integration of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Oh, wow, that's so impressive. I can't wait to get to know you better. Tell us how your journey. How did you find cannabis as medicine?
Yeah, well, like most people growing up in North America, I thought it was a drug, and I was the goody two shoes, so I never even tried it. My brother was a proponent, so I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis after my second child was born, and struggling with pain and struggling with getting the autoimmune disease under control. And at one stage, I was on 9 different pills and still in pain. And I was walking with a cane temporarily because of flare up in my joints. And I went to see my rheumatologist, and she said, well, you have a 50% chance of ending up in a wheelchair in 5 years. And I just thought, well, I'm doing everything that I'm being told. I'm taking all the pills. I'm doing all the right things. And, this is just frustrating that I'm going down. So I thought, okay, well, let's just look around and see what else there is. And I remembered I had an 86-year-old who had asked me for a medical prescription for cannabis, which had been medically legal in Canada for a long time. But I was, one of the mainstream doctors, completely had dismissed it. And when this 86-year-old asked me, I remember feeling very judgy, but not saying anything. I remember thinking, oh my God, she's a druggie. How did I miss that? I've known her for so long. And I hadn't seen her. I mean, I turned her down for the prescription. I said, well, I don't know anything about medical cannabis and I'm not prescribing it. So, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And I haven't seen her since. So I called her up and I said, hey, it's me, your old doctor, like, where are you at? And she said, well, I did end up going and seeing somebody for a medical cannabis prescription. I'm taking CBD and my pain is so much better. And I was quite inspired listening to her. So I went and saw somebody myself and started taking CBD, fairly cynically initially, but and it's not like the THC thing where you smoke it and you're just feeling whatever. But it was a pill format. I was taking it as a vitamin, and I took it for about 3 months. But I could notice the difference starting. I got rid of my cane. I actually slowly came off a lot of the medications, and I'd say like the disease has been, in remission, and I've been much more mobile. There was a time when I would wake up in the morning, my feet would be so painful and sore that I couldn't walk on the ground. It felt like I was walking on nails when I woke up. And, not a morning goes by when I wake up and I put my feet on the ground, and I just feel so grateful that it feels like feet and not like walking on nails. So that's how I kind of got into it. And I noticed, how well I had done with it, and I still hadn't really thought of doing anything else with it. But one day my mom and I were talking, and my mom had started taking it, and it was helping her. She's got colitis. It was helping her stomach symptoms. It was helping her with menopausal and bladder issues. And we were just talking about how grateful we were for CBD. And then she said, well, you need to kind of bring this out to more people. Like, people don't know. And so that's how the journey got started along that front.
Wow. That's such a inspiring story in terms of feeling that desperation with the traditional medicine that is not working, and I cannot even imagine the pain that you were feeling and frustration, as you say, because uh, you were doing by the book the things that
Yeah.
were recommended or were prescribed and nothing worked, but you were, as you mentioned, you were deteriorating your health even further. So
Yeah.
what do you attribute these qualities of CBD in terms of this? Because if I understand correctly, your disease and the disease that also your mother helped her, this CBD, both of them share this inflammatory condition
Hmm.
that you are filled with inflammation, and in your case that inflammation started to turn your immune system against you. So
Hmm.
what have you found in terms of this CBD and this substance that does with inflammation and with autoimmune diseases, for example?
Well, so first I'll talk about CBD, which is one of the most potent anti-inflammatories known to us. And the reason for that is because, we have cannabis receptors in our body. And, it's sort of the endocannabinoids that we produce in our body, which are chemicals produced or hormones produced inside that are the feel-good hormones like anandamide. They are chemically so similar in structure to the plant that it almost seems like we were meant to consume some of it. But and because of having it being illegal for a good 80 years in there, we lost a lot of room on the research, and research is just coming on. But we know that the plant has 150 different components. We've not identified most of the components. And so we know that the CBD, CBN, CBG, some of the ones that we do know are very potent anti-inflammatories because they bind with cannabis receptors in the body, and they decrease inflammation over a period of time. But inflammation in the medical sense is a very complicated topic because we have more and more research coming out showing early childhood trauma that leads to autoimmune diseases and inflammatory issues. But sometimes, people will have, the ACE events, right? The adverse childhood events. So in medicine, we often have questionnaires where we look at someone's ACE score to see, what happened to you in childhood with major things, not little things. Could that be a factor? Are there epigenetic and genetic factors that are leading to that? Certainly, the environment we live in now, with increased exposure to chemicals and plastics and hormones in our meat and 1,000 other things that all cause that. So I think when it comes to healing yourself and whether it's intuitive or involves other modalities, a lot of times we have a fairly good sense of where the disease pathways come from. Whether or not we want to do something about it is a whole other question, right? So I think a lot of times, like when people come and then they know, something wrong with me, and they get dismissed. And then they come back again. No, I know there's something wrong with me. And then they get dismissed. So and then certainly in my 25 years of practicing medicine, I've seen a lot of that. And it's hard to, in fairness to the physicians, it's hard to separate that from someone who's really just anxious or even a hypochondriac, to separate people's intuitive senses from anxiety senses. But yes, I've kind of gone a little bit away from our CBD chat into healing.
No, not at all. No, not at all. It's quite interesting because even if you look at kind of like inflammation from itself, it's all about suppressed emotion. It's all about suppressing that unresolved pain, which is absolutely beautiful. That stress, that anger that gets kind of like shoved in there, and I think inflammation, right, on the spiritual sense, it's kind of like that fiery attention of kind of like where your body's going, stop.
Yeah.
Like we need to burn through all of this, which is interesting. And then the other thing is looking at your joints. It's all about adaptability and perfectionism, that pressure to be perfect, right? In that sense. So we start looking at it from that perspective, and we start to understand, and then we start to understand. So a lot of the times kind of like gut health as well, where it's end up like sitting there and it's going, okay, so what haven't you released? Like, what are you holding on to? Again, it's that holding on to so many things. But I love from a more holistic perspective, like you say, the earth holds everything. We are an exact replica of the earth. So if there's something missing within our bodies, it's because we can go and get it somewhere. And I believe that plant medicine holds its own consciousness as well, which is absolutely beautiful. And not all plants are for everyone. And I think that depends on the individual, where they're at, what they're depleted in as well. So it's beautiful to hear you're talking about plant medicine as well, and integrating it. And yeah, it's I'm sure there's so much study that's there. You were telling us a little bit about the history, because plant medicine has been used since probably the beginning of time.
Yeah, like, and right from the indigenous antibiotics, and I mean, we didn't have obviously the stuff that we have today, but all the ancient cultures understood that plants around us were not just coincidental. There were things there. My grandfather, I remember, would take me through walks in the forests in India, and there was a prickly plant that would, give you a rash, sort of like poison ivy here. And he said, nature is amazing. Whenever you see this plant, within 5 feet, you will see the antidote. And he would show that to me. I don't think people generally knew, but there it is. There's the plant. If you got scratched by it, always within 5 feet is the antidote. You take this plant leaf, you break it up and run it. And it's kind of ironic, because I spent my whole childhood making fun of my grandfather and his, what I thought were antiquated ways, only to now realize that Western medicine is barely starting to look at all the things that he was advocating, like in those days, saying, all your health starts with your gut. And now, medical research is like, yes, it's all about gut health. Your mental health starts in your gut. And so Ayurvedic medicine or ancient medicine was saying that hundreds, thousands of years ago. And for me, it's particularly humbling, because I used to make fun of my grandfather, because I thought, well, come on, don't be silly. How can your gut cause depression? Let me tell you all about SSRIs.
So this weekend I was in the back, and we have a bunch of nettles, and I had the girls like helping me take away a lot of the clearing out the backyard, and Laura got stung, and I was like, there's a duck leaf. This is what it looks like. Cut it open, rub it on, you'll be fine. She just reminded me of that. And she did the same thing. She's like, oh God, Mom, like, what are you doing?
But it's true. Like it takes us so long. The skepticism of the Western medicine, it takes so long to just come around and say, oh my God, there are actually good outcomes. Like when medical research started to show that your gut bacteria are affecting your mental health, I just, yes, of course, your body is a holistic system, and And now we're also, starting to accept that emotions affect health. 30 years ago, you'd be called a cuckoo, right? And now mainstream doctors have, done research, are out there talking about how trauma influences certain diseases. Like we were just talking about autoimmune, and that, the perfectionism bit. It's not a coincidence that that's much more, many more women get that than men, because women tend to be more perfectionist. So rheumatological diseases are often seen with that. Or people struggling with grief often have lung-based things. Like it's interesting to see the, the at least the coincidences that we can say at this stage, and perhaps correlation / causation as time goes on and we get more data out on that, for sure. Oh yeah.
I love the way you spoke about also these ACEs in children, because I think we all have these adverse experiences that we numb in our system, or that we neglect, or that we forget, or that we created a block inside of us just to protect us. I uh, I have been in a journey of my own therapy with the sessions that I advance, and I understand myself in terms of my childhood experience and how we are reconstructing the story. And it's so amazing how, as a child, you just can see sometimes the reflection or the example of one emotion that your parents are showing you, or that is surrounding your environment, and you associate that emotion with everything, and you even integrate that emotion into your own system, and then you develop, as a defense mechanism, that emotional system that protects you. And
Yeah, absolutely.
your children reflect to you what you have. So that's even more amazing, because my daughter is reflecting to me some of the emotions that I bury in my past, that I didn't even know that I had them. And it's just so enlightening, this journey of understanding how it can affect you. And also, I had a lot of stomach issues in my, let's say, in my adolescent years and my young adult years. So now I understand why I had those troubles in terms of my digestion issues, or diarrhea, or any kind of stomach issue I had now. So it's
Yeah,
just mind blowing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the gut especially, I think, is so responsive to the early bit. And now, the 0 to 6 age being the foundation for how the rest of your life goes, how it trains our subconscious, which makes 95% of our decisions. And then, yeah, with gut issues kind of come up, like with things like irritable bowel, colitis, food allergies. You can really, like, almost predict the history a lot of the times of what people have undergone in there. But the interesting thing with trauma is that, of course, the same thing doesn't affect everybody the same. So for some people, they can bounce back from being born in a war-torn place, being raped as a child, not, malnutrition. And then there are people that are traumatized by, they didn't get into a volleyball team, and that was the biggest thing, which for them is right. It's so the subjectiveness of trauma is fascinating. I mean, Oprah Winfrey, when you read about what her childhood was like, she stumps all predictions, right? Like repeatedly abused, teenage pregnancy. You would not think, think, okay, well, this person might have a lot of health issues, but there she is, kind of one of the most powerful women on the planet. So you don't know how people process and how they label their trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Richa, I think you were one of the first doctors that actually gave me hope in the future of medicine, in the sense that, the first time you and I had been seeing this in the Akashic records for maybe 3 or 4 months before you approached and you said, hey, we need to start looking at health from a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual perspective. And it was just really, that is the holistic. And I believe that there is place for all medicine, which is great. But it's also, I definitely think that's the future of medicine, is having kind of these inclusive practices where you do look at somebody from all directions. And I think your journey kind of shows how that came to being in that sense. Could you give us some examples of where you started to think, okay, wait a minute? Because like you said, you were quite skeptical. I think you will go through the training of this is what it looks like, right?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly don't grow up being exposed to different modalities, right? It's called alternative. It's not mainstream. I had exposure to Ayurvedic medicine in my early years in India. So, but when I was here in my med school, I actually did a research project on how Ayurvedic herbs had been used to lower cholesterol. So I did this 30 years ago. It was, nobody had heard of Ayurveda at that time. And, herbs, well, you can't give herbs for cholesterol. But there was enough evidence there that I was fascinated by it. Because, we're reading about statins save a lot of lives, but, they don't come without issues. And so I was like, okay, well, what about the people that have issues? What can we do? And pros and cons and things. So it's, increasingly in the information age with literally every piece of information that's available to humans in our hand right here. It's mind blowing. 30 years ago, we couldn't have imagined that anything you want to look up in the world is right here. You don't have to go to libraries. You don't have to do anything. So we're very well positioned to be able to pull all the good stuff from every branch of medicine and incorporate in what is intuitive for us in our own bodies, right? So we don't have to do necessarily what one person in a white coat says. We can pull it together and do our own healing and our own approach to it. And for me, it started in also in my professional life, because things happened that I couldn't explain. So sometimes people, so I'll give you an example. I had a patient who came in for a prescription of an inhaler. Hadn't seen him in a while. He was asthmatic. He just wanted an inhaler. And usually it would just be a quick thing. But I just felt a gut feeling. I'm looking at this guy and I just have this gut feeling that something is wrong. And so I said, hey, you know what? Here's your prescription, but do me a favor. Let's do this blood test for you. And he was not a doctor going kind of guy. But it so happened that so I gave him this blood work, he went away, but he lost the prescription and he hadn't gone for the blood test. So he popped by again and he said, I'm sorry, I lost that prescription. This is the old days of, paper and pen, nothing was electronic. And I said, well, I noticed you haven't done the blood work. Go, okay? So he goes for the blood work, and then Friday evening at a phone call, he's got leukemia. And look back on it. I'm like, were there clinical signs that he had that I was subconsciously processing? No, I don't think so. But I had this intuitive gut feeling something was very wrong with him. All he wanted was an inhaler. But I forced him, to go for the blood test, and there was leukemia. And, with leukemia, the faster you catch it, the better your outcomes are. So I started to have some of these experiences that accumulated where I had a lady who had back pain that was out of sync with what the x-ray showed. And so we looked at, I've done an MRI. She just had way too much bizarre back pain. And I've done an MRI and x-ray, and I'm not able to fix it. And then one night I had a dream that she had TB in the spine. And I'm Canadian trained. I've never come across TB in the spine. She certainly didn't have, the weight loss and the fevers and those kinds of things. So, but I woke up and I'm like, TB in the spine. Let's see if I can test for this. So actually set her up for it, which was a little bit awkward because I had to fill out in the requisition what my reason for suspecting it was, and I couldn't say a dream. But it turned out she was positive. And so we went down that journey, ended up treating her for disseminated TB. And there were just a few of these things that came up that were like, okay, maybe there are things I can't always put my finger on and explain. I've actually dreamt about diagnoses for patients multiple times. And I've learned, over the years that if I have a dream about somebody, I just follow through, and it might make for the most awkward, bizarre conversation. I don't always say where it's coming from, but it's, I think that there's definitely intuitive healing, or maybe with healers pick something up, and maybe it is 100 different subconscious signals that our brain interprets that we don't realize, or maybe it's just energy. But certainly my experiences have been bizarre and not something. No medical journal wants to publish that. It's not provable, unless I start writing down my dreams before I see the patient.
It's funny that you mentioned the dreams and this intuitive gut feeling that we all have, because I'm listening to a book that is about intuition, and this author she says that you should ask before you go to sleep to solve any problem that you have in your life, or even to advance if you want to write a book, to design the chapter, to design the dialogue or the problem that you want to write about. Whatever it is, you can just ask before you go to sleep, and your unconscious mind is going to do the work. Once you wake up, you will feel inspired to just flow with that information and write. And as you mentioned, writing down your dreams as early as you can when you wake up, or as fast as you can when you wake up, is just the recipe of having this journal intuitive system, let's say, that you can design for your own benefit and to help other people, because your brain is working while you are sleeping, no?
Yeah, for sure.
It's actually, there's a technique called morning pages, which is morning journaling. And it is that, it's usually between 3 a.m. and probably about 5, or just before you wake up, you're still in this thread of receiving information as well from your higher self, from your guides, from wherever you've been traveling, whatever your dreams that you've been processing. And if you take your journal and that's the first thing you do before you even get up and just write the train of thought, for at least the first 10 minutes, when the ego wakes up and starts saying, what are you writing? That doesn't make sense. What is that sentence structure? That grammar is wrong. Then you just stop, because then you actually awake and you're ready to face the day. You get a lot of your information first thing in the morning, which is absolutely brilliant in that processing. So, David, how long until we start teaching intuition? You're a teacher, you teach all this medicine. How long until we start teaching that in schools and unis as part of the course?
I really wish that we could teach that, because we really need that kind of people nowadays. And I think these younger generations have this intuition more developed than us, because but we are blocking them by the amazing amount of digital distractions. So if we step away from those distractions and we train them to be more focused on their own feelings, on their own gut sensations, and feeling the body also, I think that they can do a really, really great change in the institutions that we nowadays have. And I always try to teach my students that, because I tell them, just feel the things and ask your body what does it want, because many times we shut down the body before we take the pill. No, we usually grab the pill and mask the symptoms or stop the symptoms, and we don't even allow the body to heal, to start displaying the magic that is inside of us. And we are depleting our immune system by doing that, because we are training it to just receive a pill and shut down. And the more we do that, the easier the any other disease is gonna grow and expand inside of us. So just allowing sometimes the feelings, sometimes these emotions that are, of course, big and they don't feel comfortable. It's good feeling that cold symptoms for one day or even one day and a half is not bad. And we have trained ourselves to don't feel that kind of pain. But that pain is something that your body is doing to heal. No?
Yeah, totally. I think that we're all born intuitive, and then society kind of, beats it out of us. And it for a long time, I think for many years, it wasn't, you were considered a little cuckoo if you even talk about intuition. And or medical intuition, or there's some areas we accept intuition, like a mother's intuition, right? Like most people who work in pediatrics or children's hospitals will tell you that if a mom insists something's wrong with her baby and she's not an anxious, overdriven type person, then usually there's something wrong with the baby, and I put a lot of faith in, like, if a mom in my practice is coming in saying, I know the kid's not well, then you pay attention, even though, your initial parameters might be like, okay, he doesn't have a fever. Oh, his ears look fine. Moms usually know, and we accept that. We're a little bit behind accepting that we often know what's wrong with our bodies too, or we know, especially the sense of something is not right. I've diagnosed or picked up some weird, rare cancers in patients over the years because they kept saying they knew this. And you have to balance that with a publicly funded healthcare system where you can't send them for every test, but to how to narrow it down, and to, if people know, oftentimes people know. I actually just had a patient who said to me last week, he said, I think my time is done. I have a month left, he said. And I came out of the room feeling so sad, and my staff looked at me and I'm like, well, yeah, he's just talking out of his head. What does he know? And I was like, no, people know. It doesn't change my care, or, I'm not withdrawing anything or any of those things. But so often I've had patients that will say, oh, this is what I think will happen. And it does. It's, I think society has taught us to ignore our intuitions and our self-healing mechanisms and so many other things, but it's unfortunately making a comeback. We're starting to open our eyes and ears, and definitely listen and have more conversations like we're having, right? Like from different backgrounds and perspectives of, what else is out there.
I just did a talk at the Theosophical Society last week around the how we're all psychic or all intuitive, and how we're born with it, and how it is just, we've all walked into a room and felt uncomfortable.
Yes.
It's like there's nothing tangible about it. Or we've walked in and we've met people that we've become best friends within the first 30 seconds. Like that is all there, right? So, or, whatever it may be, it shows up through all of our lives, which is incredible. There's a couple of things that you said there, Richard, because going back to from an Akashic perspective, in looking at the soul's blueprint, and it's looking at the we've come to explore certain themes in our lives. So we choose our parents. So looking at everything that they are, everything that they're not, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and all the rest of that. And I honestly do believe, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, that we, as humans, I actually don't think anybody escapes this plane without trauma. I mean, it's traumas where we grow, where we expand. And I think we spend the first, maybe 25 years, 30 years, putting on those jackets of trauma to then spend lifetimes rebelling against it. And then we get to a later stage where we start healing that by taking all of these off and getting to really realize who are we through that whole, experience. So it's amazing how the body is such an amazing mechanic that keeps telling us and gives us these little nudges as to our health. So it might even start as a cold or whatever, and we just ignore it. We are so taught to override our intuition, override our bodies, and going, it's okay, I'll rest next week, I'll sleep, I just need to finish this project, I'll sleep. I'll sleep in July. It's just around the corner, kind of a thing. I think we totally dismiss sleep, but yeah, I think all of that is kind of like it surfaces, and it's so harsh to say that the soul chooses these themes, but in another sense, it's absolutely beautiful because we've created the playground that we've come to explore. And I think connecting into the body is so important to learn to discover who we are, because a lot of the times, not only is it from this lifetime, but could be past lifetimes, or it could even be we're healing for the ancestors that have come through. And there's even First Nations belief, and it's our belief as well in many Indigenous beliefs, that when we heal for ourselves, we're healing the 7 generations before, and we're healing the generations that are coming. But I believe that it needs to be a complete holistic healing, otherwise it continues to carry on. So I love that you picked it up, and even looking at the chakras within the root chakra, the sacral chakra, and how it pertains to those years, which is beautiful. And then I've had one experience with mothers and babies. I did craniosacral therapy, and I had this mom come in, and she had a toddler. She came in with a dad, and he was having a lot of kind of like gastric, digestive issues, and he wouldn't sit still. So I said, it's okay, I'll put you on the table, because the dad was there. So he just looked after the baby. So I treated the mom, and you could see that the baby was just kind of like, he was just releasing all the gas as I was working on the mom. And the father just looked at it and just went, what is going on here? And he was just like, his whole mood shifted, which was absolutely amazing. And they say that up to the age of 2, it's almost kind of like we're so interlinked, like with our nervous systems. It's incredible how when one feels, the other one does as well. So it's a beautiful, our bodies are absolutely fascinating. I just find it so incredible how all of this works.
Well, and tie it into science. So we found that, moms will carry fetal cells the rest of their lives, right? So we're always connected to human beings we've created in our bodies. That's and I think that perhaps adds at that level of intuition, and maybe there are, genetics behind that link as well. But that's fascinating. Going back to what you were saying, Natasha, about, people pick the traumas and how that can be a source of growth. I definitely hear dozens of patients over the last 30 years will say, grateful for my disease. Grateful that I had this because it made me a better person. Just like there's growth through trauma, there's growth through disease. And a lot of people are on the treadmill of life, just running away, and they get diagnosed with a chronic disease, an autoimmune disease, cancer. And as horrendous as the journey is, and whatever losses come along the way, I am constantly surprised at the number of people that say that they are a better person for it. Their life is better for it, and they're actually grateful it happened because they're happier now. And that always remember that when you're giving someone the big C diagnosis or some bad chronic disease news, that sometimes trauma and disease are actually factors of change for us, and perhaps we write them into our soul path, right?
Absolutely, I agree with that, and it's kind of like we put in these little wake up calls along the way, along our journey. I used to volunteer at Wellsprings, just in Calgary as well, because they had this beautiful program to support people that were going through cancer and healing and all sorts of stuff. And it's quite amazing. One of the things that I thought is like, I'm going to go there and I love people and I'm going to get attached to people. And then what if they transition? It's going to be quite sad. I had the biggest lesson in my life. Everybody that I saw, because I used to volunteer, I think it was on a Wednesday, they were like, yeah, I have this, but I'm going to kick it on its butt. And so many people that came back and said, hey, I'm, cancer free. I've just changed my life around, changed my diet, changed my attitude, changed my mental attitude towards it. And it was amazing. And one of them actually, before I left, one of them was talking about CBD and how it helped, which is, now that I remember, it was amazing. And he was like, but it was all hush hush. He was just like, no, do it, go, It's amazing. It works.
It's true. It's getting less hush hush. I remember about 5-7 years ago, patients that were taking CBD, if they were going for surgery, the hospital would freak out and nobody knew what to do with anything. And now, they have actually standard instructions of, if you're getting surgery, you can stop your CBD this many days before, just like you stop your medications and things. And a lot of cancer doctors are incorporating CBD into cancer treatments. Lots of research on that as well. So yeah, it's exciting times because things are moving, things are changing. Attitudes are changing. Like David said, a lot of the young people, I think, are less rigid than our generations were, perhaps. So, there's a lot of positivity overall, a lot of hope for the future, as much as things can seem bleak sometimes politically, but there's good things too.
What have you perceived, Richa, in terms of interviewing a patient and just listening to their own story? How does that dialogue helps in awakening your intuition to something is behind the symptom that she or he is having, and also how do you see that process of healing nowadays also being established as a practice that can help us to develop a new medicine, a new medicine that is based in understanding the patient more than prescribing the patient.
Yeah. I mean, one of the cornerstones of family medicine versus, there's a difference between family medicine and general practice. A lot of people are like, are you just a GP or are you a specialist, right? So that just a GP is always fascinating because, there's no such thing. It doesn't feel like a just, first of all, because, oh man, you got to know everything about everything. But also the GP term is outdated. So it's until about 35 years ago, people would finish medical school and do your basic internship, and then you could be a GP. And if you didn't want to do that, you would do specialization. But that system ended a while ago. There are no GPs in Canada anymore. You finish medical school and then you pick a specialization. So family practice is a specialty. There's a specialization just like neurology or surgery or any of the other ones. But one of the amazing things in family practice that you learn in the training and as you do it is the outcomes of disease and how people live their lives is so complex that it does not boil down to a few lab numbers or a couple of medicines. So one of the things I learned, like you asked David, is as I'm doing intake, I've got most of my patients I've had for 25 years. And that's been a real privilege because not only do I then know them and their family systems, I've also seen them evolve, right? I've seen them go on their journey of their, opening themselves up to new things, sometimes closing themselves off to things, but you're part of the journey, you see how they're healing, and that the disease isn't just a number in a lab. The disease is how it affects the whole system and how people want to do that. So I love that I can have a patient that I've known for 20 years and I've seen how they dealt with their father's death or how they dealt with their divorce. Now they've got this issue, and you know how much you can support them medically, but also emotionally, and spiritually. Of where each person needs that, where they are on their journey, instead of, well, here's a pill and let's do the blood test again in 6 months kind of thing. So it's a beautiful thing about being able to practice family medicine. And I wish the system was such that we could spend a lot more time in having that dialogue with each member. But, lifestyle choices that in the old days, medical charts, we never took social histories, lifestyle things. Right now, simple things like how much exercise are you getting? How much caffeine do you drink? What's your, social life like? Are you living on your own? Are you interacting with people? Which is a huge determinant of health outcomes. And are you living alone? You never see people. Even more important than, are you smoking or not? Like those kinds of things just become so important. And you see that reflected even in the medical charts. Now my medical chart has like a lifestyle column that just gets deeper and deeper and deeper, because those are the things that actually impact people's health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's lovely how this integration is coming again in
Yeah. Yeah.
this lifetime, let's say, because that was also the ancient way of knowing the
Right?
body. The
Yeah.
Greeks, all these cultures that are years ago,
Yeah.
they knew that, and they perfected those systems of integrating mind, body, and spirit, because they had a different spiritual practice than the one that we have today, but they had a reflective spiritual integration with their own dialogue, with their own thoughts. They spend a lot of time not doing anything, and just letting the mind wander and discover new thoughts. And of course they didn't have these digital things that we have now, and that was a huge help, because nowadays we feel that there is a lot of let's say noise, no, that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
covers up your own thoughts, no.
Yeah, for sure. We actually very rarely have downtime now, right? So I think sadly, as a society, that'll probably have some ripple effects, because we're never bored. We always have a phone, and in that phone, we have the world's knowledge, but also all the games and all the social media and everybody we've ever known reachable. And so, yeah, we're never bored.
But
remember.
I also think there's also a pressure to be busy. There's a pressure to, like, I used to know, like, I used to take my dog for a walk and I'd be listening to a self-help book, or I'd be listening to this or listening to that, because every minute counts, right? And I think actually very recently, in the last 2 or 3 months, I've been like, how about I just listen to the birds? Not
Yeah.
have somebody talking into my head, into my mind. How about I just walk? And it felt so odd to not be, again, doing and just to be. And I think that's what we miss in kind of like back maybe 50 years ago. We had a slower pace. We had so much of it like a slower pace, and we switched off at 5 o'clock. We switched off until the next day. Right. And yeah, we just don't have that anymore from work or for anything. Yes, we have our worries. We think about it, but we weren't working until 10, 11 o'clock at night. It just seems that the more we're on this hamster wheel, the less time we have, the less we do, unless we consciously go, hey, stop. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. These are my boundaries. These are my non-negotiables, because it is what we're needing to do. So I think everything's coming to, I think so many structures are being crumbling and we're restructuring, but we're starting to look back at our health again, because, we work, and then one day you find yourself having a heart attack, and you don't even like what for, kind of a thing. And I think we're starting to look at quality of life, and we're starting to look at not only money wealth, but time wealth and health wealth as well. So I think that's all starting to come in. So conversations like these, I think, are so important. And I love that you're actually changing the way you practice, because leading by example is, it's amazing. So well done, both of you. It gives us hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, I think that we have talked about many things, and we cover a good ground of this integrative and intuitive medicine. So maybe to wrap up this topic, could you help people that are listening understand how this plant in a specific CBD medicine, and also the intuition, will change the landscape of medicine?
Ooh, that's a heavy one.
Yeah, I know. It's just to cover more. Let's say.
Well, I think the first one with intuitive healing is that in medicine we're definitely disseminating power to the patient. It used to be that you would go see a doctor. Most people didn't understand their diagnosis, didn't know what they were taking. And they took the medicine the doctor gave, and they just weren't empowered. And now people have access to their own blood work, in Alberta for sure. Sometimes my patients get the blood work results before I've seen it. And I'm getting phone calls to the clinic. And going, whoa, wait, okay, let me let me look at it.
Let me see it first.
But I mean, flip side of everything. But I love that people are now empowered. They can Google things, they can look up, they understand. So that helps you hopefully settle any unreasonable anxiety, because people can have unreasonable health related anxieties. And I mean, that can be a very costly thing for a publicly funded healthcare system, and can be a very upsetting thing for the patients as well. So empowerment, you read, you understand, you look at your results, you look at your report, and then you can actually, that allows you to intuitively check in with yourself and say, where do I feel in my system? Like, what is not right? How can I express that to my doctors? How can I get the right diagnosis and healing around that? So I think that is, the part of healing. And then in terms of plant-based medicines, we're coming alive more and more, not just to medicines and components like CBD, which have amazing properties, but also plants in general. We're after a lot of research funded by, the meat industry, really, for several decades. We're now realizing that plant-based diet, the way a lot of ancient cultures have, is the healthier way to go. And plants have so many anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, anti-pain, so many other properties that we're just, it's an abundance that we're barely tapping into. So I think there's a lot of benefit out there. I encourage people to research. And, that doesn't just mean put in a term on Google and read the first thing AI spits out at you. It means, actually look at the source of papers, look at what's pharma funded versus independent research. And like I said, sometimes the meat and dairy industry is behind some of these articles, and you can manipulate things to show anything you want, but, delve into it, read about it, read creditable sources that are, more trustable, and then follow your gut, because I do think your body always knows. It always knows. We're just taught to ignore it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Well, yeah, that was beautiful. And I even say many of those things to my students, that they have to go further in the articles in the science and just look who's sponsoring them now, because many articles are just sponsored by the industry, so they are not reliable, unfortunately.
Yeah. Empower yourself with knowledge.
Yeah. Thank you,
Love that.
Richa.
Thank you. Thank
Natasha,
you for having me.
always. And thank you everyone for listening. And of course, oh, we forgot. Where can people find you?
Oh, well, I have a few websites. There's a Dr. Love CBD website, which is drlovecbd.com. I have the CANU education website, which is CANNU.ca, and that's information on cannabis. And I'm on most of the social medias as well. So Instagram, just my name, Dr. Richa Love, TikTok, Facebook. So yeah.
Perfect.
And through you guys.
Yes.
Of course. Yeah.
Absolutely.
In this episode, we will link many of your links, of course. And well, just ask questions and let us know what topic also you would like to know in the next episodes. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in our next episode. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.